The wagon wheel cracked with a sound like a gunshot, and Eliza Morgan's father cursed, loud enough to wake the dead across 3 states, as their covered wagon lurched to a violent stop on the dusty trail outside Murphy's, California, in the scorching summer of 1869. Eliza gripped the wooden seat as her mother let out a startled cry, the jolt nearly throwing them both from their perch. The wheel, already weakened from their journey over the Sierra Nevada, had finally given up its fight against the rugged terrain. Her father climbed down, his weathered face growing redder by the second as he examined the damage. "Completely split," he announced, running a hand through his thinning gray hair. "We are not making it another mile on this wheel." They had been traveling for months, leaving behind failed farmland in Missouri for the promise of California gold country. Eliza, at 19 years old, had watched her father's dreams crumble one after another, each failure making him harder, more desperate. The gold rush had long since peaked, but her father refused to believe his fortune was not waiting somewhere in the western hills. "There's a ranch house about a quarter-mile back," her mother said quietly, her voice carrying the exhaustion of their long journey. "I saw it from the ridge." Her father nodded, his jaw set in that familiar stubborn line. "Eliza, you stay with your mother and watch our belongings. I will see about getting help." He returned an hour later with a tall, lean man who walked with the easy confidence of someone completely at home in this wild landscape. The stranger wore dusty work clothes, a wide-brimmed hat, and had the sun-bronzed skin of a man who spent his days outdoors. Eliza guessed him to be in his mid-20s, perhaps 6 or 7 years her senior. "This is Yates Fletcher," her father said, his tone oddly formal. "He owns the ranch nearby. He says he has a spare wagon wheel." "Madam," Yates said, tipping his hat to Eliza's mother, then to Eliza herself. His eyes were a striking gray-blue, like storm clouds over the mountains. "I can help you folks out, but I have got to be honest. That wheel is the only spare I have, and I need it for my own wagon. It is not something I can just give away." "We can pay," her father said quickly, though Eliza knew their funds had dwindled to almost nothing. "How much money do you have?" Yates asked directly. Her father's face flushed. $32. Yates shook his head. "That wheel cost me $50 to have made special. It is reinforced, built to last. I cannot take less than what I paid for it." Eliza watched her father's hands clench into fists at his sides. She had seen that look before, the desperation of a man with no options left. The sun was beginning to sink lower in the sky, and the temperature would drop quickly once darkness fell. They could not spend the night on this exposed trail with all their possessions vulnerable to thieves or worse. "I have to have that wheel," her father said. "Name your price. What else would you take?" Yates looked uncomfortable, shifting his weight. "Sir, I do not think anything," her father pressed. "We have tools, supplies, my wife's good cookware. You can have your pick." Eliza's mother placed a gentle hand on her husband's arm, but he shook it off. Yates's gaze swept over their wagon, assessing their meager belongings with what looked like pity in his eyes. Then his attention landed on Eliza, and she felt her cheeks warm under his scrutiny. She was aware of how she must look after months of travel, her dark hair falling loose from its pins, her dress dusty and worn. "Your daughter," her father said suddenly, and Eliza's heart stopped. "You need a wife, do you not? Most men out here do." "Father," Eliza gasped, but he ignored her. Yates looked shocked, taking a step back. "Sir, I cannot. That is not. She is a good girl, strong, can cook and clean. She would make a fine wife for a landowner like yourself." Her father's voice had taken on the tone of a man selling livestock, and Eliza felt sick. "Absolutely not," Yates said firmly. "I will not trade a wagon wheel for a human being. That is," he stopped, clearly appalled. Then we are stuck here, her father said flatly. We will have to make camp and hope no one comes along to rob us blind or worse. The silence stretched out, broken only by the wind rustling through the dry grass. Eliza's mother had gone pale, her eyes glistening with unshed tears. Eliza wanted to scream, to run, but where would she go? They were miles from any town, surrounded by wilderness. There has to be another way, Yates said, but his voice had lost its certainty. You tell me what it is and I will take it, her father challenged. Yates removed his hat, running a hand through his dark hair. He looked at Eliza again, and this time she met his eyes directly. She tried to read what she saw there: discomfort, certainly, but also something that might have been sympathy, or perhaps just resignation. If I agreed to marry your daughter, Yates said slowly, it would be her choice. I would need to hear her say yes of her own free will. Eliza, tell the man yes, her father commanded. No, Yates interrupted. I mean truly her choice, without you standing here pressuring her. He turned to Eliza's father. I will give you the wheel regardless of what she decides. But if she agrees to marry me, I want it to be because she chooses to, not because you have forced her into it. Her father looked ready to argue, but Yates held up his hand. Those are my terms, sir. Take them or leave them. Eliza's mother spoke up quietly. Let me talk to her, please. Yates nodded, and Eliza's mother led her away from the men to the other side of the wagon. In the privacy of that small space, her mother took Eliza's hands in her own. Mama, you cannot possibly think I should agree to this, Eliza said, her voice shaking. I think you should know what you are choosing between, her mother replied. We have no money, no prospects. Your father's dreams of gold are just that, dreams. Even if we get to wherever we are headed next, there is no guarantee of anything but more hardship. So I should sell myself to a stranger? No, darling, but maybe you should consider that this stranger seems like a decent man. He could have taken advantage of our situation, but instead he is offering you a choice. That says something about his character. I do not know anything about him. You would learn. People have been building marriages on less than this for centuries. Her mother's eyes were sad but pragmatic. At least here you would have a home, security, a chance at a real life instead of chasing your father's impossible dreams. Eliza looked past the wagon, toward the distant ranch house barely visible in the golden evening light. Her mother was right, there was no future in continuing this journey. Her father would drag them from one failed venture to another until they had nothing left. But marrying a complete stranger felt like jumping from one uncertainty into another. What if he is cruel? She whispered. Then you tell me now and we will find another way, her mother said firmly. But look at him, Eliza. Really look. Does he seem cruel to you? Eliza peered around the wagon. Yates stood apart from her father, his posture relaxed but watchful. He had an honest face, she thought, with strong features and eyes that seemed kind despite the awkwardness of their situation. He had refused to take her without her consent, which was more than many men would have done. I am frightened, Eliza admitted. I know, sweetheart, but sometimes being brave means being frightened and doing it anyway. Her mother squeezed her hands. Whatever you decide, I will support you, but think about what kind of life you want. When they returned to the men, Eliza's heart was pounding so hard she thought everyone must be able to hear it. Yates looked at her expectantly, his expression carefully neutral. Her father looked impatient, already anticipating her agreement. I need to know something first, Eliza said, surprised by the steadiness of her own voice. What kind of man are you, Yates Fletcher? He seemed taken aback by the question. I am a rancher. I came out here 5 years ago with money I saved from working on my uncle's farm in Kentucky. I have got a small herd of cattle, some horses, and decent land. I work hard, I do not drink to excess, and I have never raised my hand to a woman or a child." "That is what you do," Eliza said. "I asked what kind of man you are." Something shifted in his expression. Respect, perhaps. "I try to be honest and fair. I believe in keeping my word. I do not have much use for cruelty or meanness. I figure people have a hard enough time in this world without making it worse for each other." "Why did you never marry before now?" "Never found the right woman, I suppose." "And I have been busy building up my ranch. It is not much yet, but it is mine, and I am proud of what I have accomplished." Eliza took a deep breath. "If I agreed to marry you, what would you expect of me?" "I would expect you to be my partner," Yates said. "To help run the household, maybe the ranch too if you were interested. I would expect honesty and respect, same as I would give you. Beyond that, we would figure it out as we went. And if I said no, then I would give your father the wheel anyway, wish you well, and that would be the end of it." Her father made a sound of protest, but Yates silenced him with a look. Eliza studied Yates's face, searching for any sign of deception or hidden cruelty. All she saw was a man who seemed as uncomfortable with this bizarre situation as she was, yet who was trying to handle it with as much dignity as possible. "I will marry you," she said quietly. "But I want it understood that I am making this choice freely. No one is forcing me." "Understood," Yates said, and something in his eyes softened. "I will do my best to make sure you do not regret it." Her father clapped his hands together, already moving toward the wagon. "Excellent. Let us get that wheel on and be on our way then." "Wait," Yates said. "If Eliza is staying here as my wife, we should do this properly. Is there a minister traveling with you?" "We are not exactly traveling with anyone," her father said impatiently. "Then we will ride into Murphy's tomorrow and find someone to perform the ceremony. Tonight, Eliza can stay at my ranch in the spare room," he added quickly. "Everything above board and proper." "Now see here," her father started, but her mother cut him off. "That sounds very appropriate, Mr. Fletcher. Thank you for being so considerate." The next 2 hours passed in a blur. Yates returned to his ranch and came back with the wheel and tools to install it. He worked efficiently, replacing the broken wheel while Eliza's parents sorted through their belongings. Her mother helped her pack a small trunk with her few possessions, 2 other dresses, some undergarments, a brush, and a small wooden box that held her grandmother's locket. "I wish I had more to give you," her mother said, tears finally spilling down her cheeks as they embraced. "A proper wedding dress, at least." "It does not matter, Mama," Eliza said, though her own tears were falling now. "I will write to you. Once you are settled somewhere, you will let me know where." "Of course, darling, of course." Her father's goodbye was more perfunctory. He hugged her briefly, told her to be a good wife, and then climbed back onto the wagon seat with visible relief. Eliza watched them roll away into the gathering dusk, her mother's hand waving until they disappeared around a bend in the road. "You can still change your mind," Yates said softly from behind her. "I can catch up to them." Eliza shook her head. "No, I made my choice." "Then let us get you home before dark." The ride to his ranch was quiet, with Eliza seated on a gentle mare Yates had brought for her, her trunk secured on his own horse. The ranch house came into view as the last light faded from the sky, a sturdy wooden structure with a wide porch, surrounded by corrals and outbuildings. It was modest but well-maintained, speaking of the care its owner took with his property. Inside, Yates lit several oil lamps, revealing a main room with a stone fireplace, a kitchen area, and simple but solid furniture. Everything was clean but clearly lacking a woman's touch. "The spare room is through there," he said, pointing to a door off the main room. "It is not much, but it has a good bed and a window. You can fix it up however you like." Eliza peered into the small room. It held a narrow bed, a washstand, and a chest of drawers. simple but more than adequate. "I have some stew left from dinner," Yates offered. "Are you hungry?" She realized she was, actually. They ate together at the rough-hewn table, the silence awkward but not entirely uncomfortable. Yates seemed as unsure of how to navigate this strange situation as she was. "Tell me about the ranch," Eliza said, needing to fill the quiet with something. Yates's face brightened slightly. "I've got about 300 acres. Not huge, but good grazing land. I run about 50 head of cattle right now, and I've got plans to expand. There is a creek that runs through the property, never dries up even in summer. I've got a vegetable garden out back, though I am afraid it is not in the best shape. I am better with animals than plants." "I could help with that," Eliza offered. "My mother taught me gardening." "I would appreciate that." He paused. "Eliza, I want you to know I did not plan for any of this. I was not looking to acquire a wife through some trade. That is not who I am." "I know," she said. "I could see that on your face. You looked nearly as horrified as I felt." A small smile tugged at his lips. "I suppose this is not how most people start a marriage." "No, I suppose not." They finished eating, and Yates showed her where things were: the pump for water, the washroom out back, the barn where she could find him during the day. He was respectful, keeping his distance, treating her like a guest rather than a wife he had bartered for. That night, lying in the narrow bed in the spare room, Eliza stared at the ceiling and wondered what she had done. She had agreed to marry a man she had known for mere hours, had said goodbye to her parents, and was now alone on a ranch in the middle of California gold country. It seemed impossible, like something from a fever dream. But when exhaustion finally pulled her into sleep, her dreams were not of fear or regret. Instead, she dreamed of gray-blue eyes and a voice that had insisted on her right to choose. Morning came with the sound of a rooster crowing and the smell of coffee brewing. Eliza dressed quickly in her least worn dress and found Yates in the kitchen, frying eggs and bacon. "Good morning," he said, looking almost shy. "I hope you slept well." "Well enough, thank you." They ate breakfast together, then Yates hitched up his wagon. "We should head into Murphy's. It is about an hour's ride. We can find a minister and make this official." The town of Murphy's was bustling with activity when they arrived: miners, merchants, families going about their business. The gold rush might have peaked, but the town still thrived on the remnants of that fever dream of wealth. Yates drove them to a small white church at the edge of town, where they found Reverend Thomas, a kind-faced man in his 50s. "We would like to be married," Yates explained. "Today, if possible." The Reverend looked between them, clearly noting Eliza's travel-worn appearance and the lack of any wedding preparations. "This seems rather sudden, if you do not mind me saying so." "It is a bit of an unusual situation," Yates admitted. "But we are both of age and of sound mind. The lady has consented freely. We just want to do things properly." Reverend Thomas studied them for a long moment. "I will need witnesses, and I would like to speak with the young lady alone, if you do not mind, Mr. Fletcher." Yates nodded and stepped outside. The Reverend gestured for Eliza to sit in one of the pews. "Are you being forced into this marriage, Miss Morgan?" "Eliza Morgan, and no, I am not being forced. Not exactly." She found herself telling him the whole story: the broken wagon wheel, her father's desperation, Yates's insistence on her consent. The Reverend listened without interrupting, his expression thoughtful. "It sounds like Mr. Fletcher did his best to handle a difficult situation with honor," he said when she finished. "But are you certain this is what you want? I can help you if you are in trouble." "I am certain," Eliza said, and realized she meant it. "I know it seems mad, marrying a stranger. But I believe he is a good man, and staying with my parents meant a future of nothing but poverty and disappointment, At least this way, I have a chance at building something real." The Reverend nodded slowly. "Very well. If you are sure, I will perform the ceremony." Yates returned, and the Reverend sent him to find witnesses. He came back 20 minutes later with an older couple who introduced themselves as George and Martha Henderson, owners of the general store. "Yates here has been a good customer of ours for years," George said with a friendly smile. "We are happy to stand up for him." Martha looked at Eliza with kind, curious eyes. "My dear, you look like you have been traveling. Would you like to freshen up? I have a shop next door with a nice washroom." Grateful, Eliza accepted. Martha led her to the general store and upstairs to her private quarters. She provided Eliza with warm water, soap, and even a beautiful ivory-colored dress. "It was going to be my daughter's wedding dress," Martha explained, "but she eloped with a sailor 6 months ago. Broke my heart at the time, but she is happy, and that is what matters. The dress has just been sitting in my wardrobe. You should wear it." "I could not possibly." "Of course you can. Every bride deserves to feel beautiful on her wedding day, even if the circumstances are unusual." Martha's eyes twinkled. "Yates has been a bachelor since he arrived here. All the unmarried women in town have set their caps at him, but he never paid them any mind. I have got to say, I am dying to know how you caught his attention." Eliza found herself laughing despite her nerves. "It is quite a story." By the time Martha had helped her into the dress, fixed her hair, and pinched her cheeks for color, Eliza barely recognized herself in the mirror. The dress fit remarkably well, and for the first time since her father's wagon wheel broke, she felt like perhaps this was not a complete disaster. When she returned to the church, Yates's expression made her blush. He stared at her with undisguised admiration. "You look beautiful," he said quietly. "Thank you," she murmured. The ceremony was simple but meaningful. Reverend Thomas spoke about marriage as a partnership, about the importance of respect and kindness. When it came time for vows, Yates took Eliza's hands in his. His palms were calloused from hard work, but his grip was gentle. "I, Yates Fletcher, take you, Eliza Morgan, to be my wife. I promise to treat you with respect, to work alongside you, and to do my best to make you happy. I cannot promise that life will always be easy, but I can promise that you will never face it alone." Eliza's voice shook slightly as she repeated her own vows. "I, Eliza Morgan, take you, Yates Fletcher, to be my husband. I promise to be honest with you, to stand by your side, and to build a life together. I may not know what the future holds, but I am willing to face it with you. Do you have a ring?" the Reverend asked Yates. Yates shook his head, looking embarrassed. "I did not think I do not use this," Martha said, slipping a simple gold band from her own finger. "You can return it when you get your own." But Yates was already pulling something from his pocket. "Wait, I do have something." He held up a ring made of braided silver wire, elegant in its simplicity. "My mother gave this to me before I left Kentucky. She said to give it to a woman worth having. I think Eliza qualifies." He slipped the ring onto Eliza's finger. It fit perfectly. "By the power vested in me, I now pronounce you husband and wife," Reverend Thomas said with a warm smile. "You may kiss your bride." Yates leaned in slowly, giving Eliza time to pull away if she wanted. She did not. Their first kiss was brief and chaste, but it sent a flutter of something unexpected through her chest. George and Martha insisted on taking them to the hotel restaurant for a wedding meal. Over roasted chicken and potatoes, the Hendersons shared stories about Murphys and offered advice for newlyweds. It felt surreal but pleasant, this pretense of a normal wedding day. As they were finishing dessert, Yates excused himself briefly. When he returned, he was carrying a leather document folder. "I want to give you something," he said to Eliza, sitting beside her. He opened the folder and pulled out an official-looking paper. "This is the deed to my ranch, all 300 acres. Eliza stared at him, confused. "I do not understand. I want to sign half of it over to you, make you a legal co-owner." "Yates, that is, you do not have to. I know I do not have to, but I want to. You did not get a choice in a lot of what happened yesterday. You are here because circumstances forced your hand and mine. But I can give you this choice. I can make sure you have security, that you own something that cannot be taken away from you." He paused, his gray-blue eyes intense. "If things do not work out between us, if you decide you want to leave, you will have land you can sell. You will have options. You will not be trapped." Tears sprang to Eliza's eyes. In all her imaginings of what this day might bring, she had never expected this. Her father had traded her for a wagon wheel, treating her like property. And here was Yates, making her a landowner in her own right. "Why would you do this?" she whispered. "Because you deserve it, because it is the right thing to do." He smiled slightly. "And because I figure if you have a stake in the ranch, you might be more inclined to stay and help me make it something great." George clapped Yates on the shoulder. "That is mighty generous of you, son." "It is just being fair," Yates said. They went to the land office that afternoon, where Yates had the deed officially amended to include Eliza's name. She signed the documents with a trembling hand, still hardly believing this was real. Eliza Fletcher, the name still felt strange, was a landowner in California. The ride back to the ranch felt different than the previous day's journey. Eliza was no longer a frightened girl being led to an uncertain fate. She was a married woman, a landowner, a partner in an enterprise. The weight of that settled over her shoulders, both terrifying and exhilarating, when they arrived home, and it was home now. Legally and officially, Yates helped her down from the wagon. The sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of gold and rose. "I will sleep in the spare room," he said. "You can have the main bedroom." "Yates, this is your home." "I cannot. It is our home now," he corrected gently. "And I want you to be comfortable. There is no rush for anything. We can take our time figuring out how this marriage works." Eliza felt a rush of gratitude for his understanding. "Thank you." That night, lying alone in the larger bedroom, Eliza thought about the remarkable turn her life had taken. 2 days ago, she had been a dependent daughter with no prospects. Now she was a wife and landowner, beginning a new chapter in a place that was starting to feel like it might become home. The next morning, Eliza woke with the determination to prove herself useful. She found Yates already outside tending to the animals. She explored the kitchen, taking stock of supplies, then set about making a proper breakfast. When Yates came in an hour later, he found eggs, bacon, biscuits, and gravy waiting for him. "This looks amazing," he said, genuine pleasure in his voice. "I usually just fry whatever is handy." "I can do the cooking from now on," Eliza offered. "If you teach me about the ranch." "Deal." They fell into a routine over the following weeks. Eliza took over the household tasks, cooking, cleaning, laundry, and tackling the neglected vegetable garden. Yates worked the ranch, tending cattle and horses, mending fences and buildings. In the evenings, they would sit together and talk. Yates told her about his life in Kentucky, his decision to head west, the challenges of starting a ranch from nothing. Eliza shared stories of her childhood, her love of reading, her dreams of having a real home instead of constantly chasing her father's failed schemes. Slowly, they learned each other. Eliza discovered that Yates had a dry sense of humor that would catch her off guard and make her laugh. He was patient with the animals, kind to his neighbors, and scrupulously honest in all his dealings. He rose early and worked until his body demanded rest, but he never complained about the labor. Yates learned that Eliza was stronger than she looked, with a stubborn streak that matched his own. She was intelligent and curious, asking endless questions about ranching until she understood not just what needed doing but why. She had a gift for coaxing things to grow, and under her care, the vegetable garden began to flourish. She sang while she worked, old songs her mother had taught her, and the sound made the house feel like a home. They maintained separate bedrooms, but as weeks turned into months, Eliza found herself increasingly drawn to Yates. The way his face lit up when he smiled, the gentleness in his strong hands, the respect he showed her in every interaction. He consulted her on ranch decisions, valued her opinions, treated her as the partner he had promised she would be. One evening in early autumn, nearly 3 months after their wedding, they sat on the porch watching the sunset. The cattle were settled for the night, the day's work complete. Eliza had made apple pie from fruit gathered from wild trees on their property, and Yates had declared it the best thing he had ever tasted. "I got a letter from my mother today," Eliza said quietly. "They have settled in Sacramento. My father found work as a clerk. Are they doing all right?" "Well enough." She asked how I was, what I should tell her. Yates looked at her, his expression serious. "What do you want to tell her?" "That I am happy," Eliza said, and realized it was true. "I never expected to be, but I am. Is that strange?" "No," Yates said softly. "I am happy too. I never imagined when I rode out to help your family that day that it would lead to this. But I cannot say I am sorry it did." "Even though you had to give up your wagon wheel," Eliza teased. "Best trade I ever made," he said, and the look in his eyes made her heart race. "Yates," she began, then hesitated. "What is it? How long are we going to keep living like polite strangers under the same roof?" He was quiet for a moment. "I did not want to pressure you. I wanted you to have time to adjust, to feel safe here." "I do feel safe. I feel more at home here than anywhere I have ever lived." She took a breath, gathering her courage. "I do not want separate bedrooms anymore." The intensity in his gaze stole her breath. "Are you sure?" "I am sure." He stood, extending his hand to her. She took it and he drew her to her feet. They stood close, the evening air warm around them. "I have been wanting to kiss you properly since the wedding," he admitted, "but I did not want to overstep." "I would like you to kiss me now," Eliza said. This kiss was nothing like their chaste wedding kiss. It was deep and searching, full of the longing that had been building between them for months. Eliza wrapped her arms around his neck and his hands settled on her waist, pulling her closer. When they finally broke apart, both were breathing hard. "I love you," Yates said. "I know that might seem impossible given how we started, but it is true. I love you, Eliza." "I love you too," she replied, joy flooding through her. "I think I have been falling in love with you for weeks, maybe longer." That night their marriage became real in every sense. Yates was gentle and patient, making sure Eliza felt cherished. Afterward, lying in his arms in the bed they would now share, Eliza marveled at the path that had led her here. Her father had tried to trade her like livestock, but instead she had found a man who treated her like a treasure. The next morning they woke tangled together, and Yates kissed her thoroughly before reluctantly getting up to tend the animals. Eliza made breakfast with a lightness in her heart, humming one of her favorite songs. As autumn deepened into winter, their love grew stronger. They worked side by side, building the ranch into something they could both be proud of. Yates taught Eliza to ride better, to rope cattle, to think strategically about managing their herd. Eliza continued improving the homestead, preserving food for winter, making curtains and cushions that softened the rough edges of ranch life. They attended church in Murphy's most Sundays, and Eliza made friends among the other ranch wives. Martha Henderson became a particular confidant, delighted to see the marriage she had witnessed turning into a genuine love match. "I knew there was something special between you two at the wedding," Martha said one day while they shopped for supplies. "The way Yates looked at you in that dress, I thought to myself, that man is already half in love." "Was he?" Eliza asked, surprised. "Oh, definitely. And you had this determination in your eyes, like you had decided to make the best of things no matter what. I admired that." News reached them occasionally of Eliza's parents in Sacramento. Her father was apparently adjusting poorly to clerk work, still dreaming of striking it rich somehow. Her mother's letters were warm but tinged with a weariness that made Eliza sad. She wrote back regularly, telling them about the ranch, about her marriage, careful to be honest without being hurtful. She wanted her mother to know she had found happiness, even if it came from circumstances that should have been tragic. Winter brought its own challenges. Snow fell heavy in the mountains and temperatures dropped. Yates worked tirelessly to keep the cattle fed and protected. Eliza kept the house warm, the food stores well managed, and her husband's spirits up during the hardest days. They would lie in bed at night, wrapped around each other for warmth, talking about their plans for spring. "I want to expand the herd," Yates said one particularly cold February night. "Maybe buy another 100 acres to the east if it becomes available, build a bigger barn." "That sounds wonderful," Eliza murmured, half asleep against his chest. "And maybe start a family," he added softly, "if you want that." Eliza tilted her head to look up at him. "I want that very much." "Yeah," his smile was tender. "Yeah, I think you would be a wonderful father. I think you will be an amazing mother." Spring arrived with an explosion of wildflowers and new grass. The cattle thrived, and Yates's careful management paid off when several of his cows produced healthy calves. Eliza's garden burst into abundance, providing fresh vegetables after months of preserved food. In May, Eliza realized her monthly courses had not come. She waited another month to be sure, then told Yates over dinner one evening. "I think I am with child," she said, watching his face carefully. Yates set down his fork slowly, his eyes widening. "Truly, I believe so. It is still early, but all the signs are there." He was around the table in an instant, pulling her to her feet and into his arms. "This is the best news, the absolute best news." Eliza laughed, happiness bubbling up inside her. "You are pleased then, pleased." "Eliza, I do not have words." He kissed her soundly. "We are going to be parents." The pregnancy progressed smoothly through summer and into fall. Yates became even more protective, insisting Eliza rest more, not work too hard. She indulged him, amused by his concern but also touched by it. Martha Henderson became an invaluable source of advice, having raised 4 children of her own. "The first one is always the most frightening," Martha said, knitting small clothes for the baby. "But you are strong, and Yates will take good care of you." In late January of 1871, as snow fell softly outside, Eliza went into labor. Yates rode through the storm to fetch Doc Morrison and Martha from town. The labor was long and difficult, testing Eliza's strength and courage. Yates stayed by her side, holding her hand, murmuring encouragement even as his own fear showed in his eyes. Finally, as dawn broke over the snow-covered ranch, their son entered the world with a lusty cry. Doc Morrison placed the baby in Eliza's arms, and she looked down at the red-faced, perfect little human they had created. "A boy," she said wonderingly. "A beautiful, healthy boy," the doctor confirmed. Yates sat beside them on the bed, one arm around Eliza, staring at his son with awe. "He is perfect. You are perfect. I love you both so much." They named him William Thomas Fletcher, after Yates's father and the reverend who had married them. Will, as they called him, became the center of their world. Yates would come in from the fields multiple times a day just to hold his son, marveling at the tiny fingers and toes. Eliza discovered that motherhood came naturally to her, though the sleepless nights were challenging. As Will grew from infant to baby to toddler, the ranch continued to prosper. Yates expanded the herd as he had planned, and they saved money carefully toward buying additional land. Eliza managed the household with increasing skill, and her garden became famous in the area. She started selling surplus vegetables and preserves in Murphy's, bringing in additional income. When Will was 2, Eliza found herself pregnant again. This time the pregnancy was easier, and in September of 1873 they welcomed a daughter they named Elena Rose. She had Eliza's dark hair and Yates's gray-blue eyes, and Will was fascinated by his baby sister. The next years were busy and full. The ranch grew into one of the most respected operations in the area. Yates's reputation for honesty and fair dealing meant other ranchers sought his advice and partnership. Eliza became known for her hospitality, and their home became a gathering place for neighbors and friends. They added 2 more children to their family, another son, James, born in 1875, and a daughter, Catherine, who arrived in 1877. Their house, which Yates had expanded twice, rang with the laughter and chaos of 4 growing children. Eliza's parents visited when Will was 5. Her father looked older and more worn, his dreams of wealth finally abandoned. He was quieter now, humbled by years of failure. Eliza watched him interact with Yates, saw the respect in his eyes as he surveyed the ranch. On the second day of their visit, her father found Eliza in the garden while she picked vegetables with Elena's help. "I owe you an apology," he said abruptly, "for what I did that day with the wagon wheel, how I tried to trade you. It was wrong." Eliza straightened, surprised. "Thank you for saying that. I was desperate and scared, and I treated you like property instead of my daughter. It has haunted me." He looked around at the thriving ranch, at Elena playing in the dirt. "But it seems things worked out well for you despite my failings." "They did," Eliza said. "But not because of what you did. Because Yates is a good man who gave me choices and treated me with respect. I can see that. He is a better man than I ever was." Her father's voice was heavy with regret. "You did the best you could with what you knew," Eliza said, choosing forgiveness. "We all make mistakes." Her mother cried when they left, not wanting to return to their small apartment in Sacramento. Eliza promised they would visit again soon and sent them home with preserved goods and money, a gift, not a loan. "You are generous with them," Yates observed that evening after the children were in bed. "They are my parents, and we have so much to share." He pulled her close. "You have such a big heart. It is one of the million things I love about you." "Only 1,000,000, Eliza teased. "At least 1,000,000. Maybe more." He kissed her temple. "Do you ever regret how we started, how we came to be married?" Eliza considered the question. "No, I wish the circumstances had been different. I wish my father had not been so desperate and foolish. But I do not regret ending up here with you." "How could I when it gave me this life? These children? This love?" "I felt guilty for a long time," Yates admitted. "Like I had taken advantage of a bad situation." "You gave me the deed to half the ranch," Eliza reminded him. "You gave me power and choice in a moment when I had neither. You spent months making sure I felt safe before pushing for anything more. That is not taking advantage. That is being decent. I just wanted you to be happy. I am. Happier than I ever imagined I could be." The years continued to pass, each one building on the last. Will grew into a serious, hard-working boy who loved the ranch. Elena was spirited and creative, always drawing or making up stories. James was the adventurous one, constantly getting into scrapes, while Catherine was gentle and shy, clinging to her mother's skirts. In 1880, When Will was 9 and Catherine was 3, tragedy struck the area. A severe drought dried up many water sources, and several neighboring ranches lost significant portions of their herds. But Yates and Eliza's ranch, with its reliable creek and careful water management, weathered the crisis. More than that, they helped their neighbors, sharing water access and lending money when needed. "We remember what it is to struggle," Yates explained to Will, who questioned why they were helping competitors. "And we help because it is the right thing to do. Today them, tomorrow may be us." The community did not forget that kindness. When cattle prices dropped the following year, those same neighbors helped Yates navigate the challenge, sharing contacts and strategies. It reinforced what Eliza had learned, that building relationships and treating people fairly paid dividends beyond money. As the children grew, Eliza and Yates made sure to teach them the story of how their parents met. They were honest about the circumstances, but emphasized the choices made, the kindness shown, the love that grew. So Grandpa traded Mama for a wagon wheel. Elena asked when she was about 10, scandalized and fascinated in equal measure. "He tried to," Yates corrected. "But your mother is not property to be traded. She made her own choice." "And what did you give Mama?" Will asked. He had heard this story before but loved it. "The deed to half the ranch," Eliza said. "Your father made me a landowner so I would always have security and choices." "That is romantic," Elena sighed. "That is practical," Will countered, but he was smiling. In 1885, Will announced his intention to study agriculture at the new university in Berkeley. Yates and Eliza were proud but sad to see their oldest leave. Elena declared she wanted to be a teacher, scandalizing some of the more traditional neighbors but receiving full support from her parents. The ranch continued to thrive. By 1890, they owned over 1,000 acres and ran several hundred head of cattle. They had built a reputation as one of the finest operations in Central California. Yates had developed innovations in water management and breeding that other ranchers came to learn about. Through it all, Eliza and Yates's love deepened. They had grown from strangers thrown together by desperation into true partners who knew each other's thoughts and hearts. They could work side by side in comfortable silence or talk for hours about everything and nothing. They had weathered challenges together: droughts, financial pressures, childhood illnesses, the normal struggles of life, and each trial had strengthened their bond. On their 20th wedding anniversary in 1889, Yates took Eliza back to Murphy's, to the little white church where they had married. Reverend Thomas had retired, but his successor welcomed them warmly. They stood in the same spot where they had exchanged vows 2 decades earlier. "I want to renew our vows," Yates said. "The ones we made before, we meant them, but we barely knew each other. I want to make them again, knowing everything I know now." So they did, with all 4 children as witnesses. Yates took Eliza's hands, the same hands that had trembled in his 20 years ago, and spoke from his heart. "Eliza, you came into my life in the strangest way possible, but you have been the greatest blessing I could have asked for. You have made me a better man, a better father, a better partner. You have filled our home with love and laughter and purpose. I promise to continue loving you, respecting you, and choosing you every single day for the rest of my life." Eliza, tears streaming down her face, replied, "Yates, you gave me a choice when I had none. You gave me a home when I was lost. You gave me love when I did not even know I was looking for it. You have been my rock, my partner, my greatest love. I promise to stand by your side, to love you through whatever comes, and to build our life together for all our remaining days." They kissed, and their children applauded. Martha Henderson, watching from a pew, dabbed at her eyes. "Still the best wedding I ever witnessed," she declared afterward. That evening, back at the ranch, Eliza and Yates sat on their porch as they had countless times before. The children were inside, the older ones supervising the younger. The sun was setting over land they had built into something magnificent. "You remember that first night I brought you here?" Yates asked. "How terrified you were." "I remember. I also remember thinking you had kind eyes." "Kind eyes. It was what gave me hope. That and the fact that you insisted on my consent. You could have just taken what my father offered, but you did not." "I could never have done that. I know. It is who you are." Eliza leaned against him, content. "We have built something beautiful, have we not?" "We have. And we are not done yet." Indeed, they were not. Over the next decade, they saw will return from university with new ideas for the ranch. They watched Alina become a respected teacher in Murphy's. James, true to his adventurous nature, traveled to Oregon to start his own ranch, while Catherine married a kind doctor and settled in Sacramento. Eliza's mother passed away in 1892, and her father followed 2 years later. Eliza mourned them but felt at peace. She had forgiven her father long ago, and her mother had lived to see her daughter happy and successful. They were buried in Sacramento, but Eliza made sure their graves were well tended. By the turn of the century, Eliza and Yates were grandparents several times over. Will had married a rancher's daughter and given them 3 grandchildren. Alina had 2 children with her husband, a businessman from town. Even James sent word from Oregon that he was a father, and Catherine had just welcomed her first child. The ranch, under Will's energetic management and Yates's experienced guidance, continued to prosper. Yates, now in his 50s, was content to step back from the day-to-day operations, though he still loved working with the animals and mentoring young ranchers. Eliza, her dark hair now streaked with silver, had become something of a matriarch in the community. She hosted regular gatherings, supported the church and school, and was known for her wisdom and kindness. Young brides often sought her advice, and she shared her story freely, wanting others to know that love could grow in unexpected soil. One evening in the spring of 1901, Eliza and Yates celebrated their 32nd wedding anniversary quietly at home. Their children had all come for a visit, filling the house with noise and grandchildren. After everyone had gone to bed, the couple sat on their porch, wrapped in blankets against the cool night air. 32 years, Eliza mused. It seems impossible. "The best 32 years of my life," Yates said. "Even counting that first awkward year when we barely knew each other, especially counting that. Getting to know you, watching you fall in love with me, falling deeper in love with you every day, it was magic." Eliza smiled. "You were so patient with me. You were worth being patient for." They sat in comfortable silence, watching stars appear in the darkening sky. Eliza thought about that frightened 19-year-old girl she had been, standing beside a broken wagon while her father bartered her away. If she could go back and tell that girl what the future held, she would not believe it. "What are you thinking about?" Yates asked. "How lucky I am, how lucky we are." "Luck had something to do with it," Yates agreed, "but I think we also made our own fortune. We chose to treat each other well, to build something together, to love each other through the hard times." "I would do it all again," Eliza said. "Every moment, even the scary ones. So would I." The years that followed were gentle ones. Yates and Eliza grew older together, their love maturing into something deep and abiding. They watched their grandchildren grow, delighted in their accomplishments, and took pride in the legacy they had built. When Yates turned 60 in 1904, the community threw a celebration in his honor. Ranchers from all over the region came to pay their respects to a man who had helped shape the cattle industry in Central California. Speaker after speaker told stories of Yates's integrity, his innovation, and his kindness. But it was Eliza's speech that moved everyone to tears. "My husband once traded a wagon wheel for a wife," she began, to scattered laughter. "It sounds like a terrible bargain on his part, but somehow he made it work." More laughter. "In all seriousness, Yates Fletcher is the finest man I have ever known. He took a desperate situation and handled it with honor. He gave me choices when I had none. He offered me partnership when others would have demanded subservience. He loved me before he had any reason to, and he has loved me faithfully every day since. I am the luckiest woman alive to call him my husband." Yates pulled her into a tight embrace as the crowd applauded, and she felt him trembling with emotion. "I love you," he whispered against her hair, "more than anything in this world. I love you too, always and forever." They continued this way, growing older but never apart, until illness claimed Yates in the winter of 1915. He was 71 years old, and he passed peacefully in his sleep with Eliza beside him. She was heartbroken but grateful for the 46 years they had shared, years that had transformed both of them. At his funeral, their children and grandchildren gathered around. Will, now running the ranch with his own son, spoke about his father's legacy. Eleanor read a poem she had written about love and partnership. James traveled from Oregon with his family to pay respects. Catherine brought her 3 children to say goodbye to the grandfather who had adored them, but it was Eliza who stood at the graveside and spoke the final words. Yates Fletcher was traded a wagon wheel for a wife and decided to give her the deed to his land instead. That choice, that act of kindness and respect, set the tone for our entire marriage. He did not just give me land, he gave me dignity, security, and love. He gave me a life I could never have imagined. And though my heart is breaking to say goodbye, I am grateful for every single moment we shared. She lived 5 more years, spending her time with her children and grandchildren, tending her beloved garden and sharing stories of the man she had loved. When she passed quietly in her sleep in the spring of 1920, at the age of 70, her family buried her beside Yates on a hillside overlooking the ranch they had built together. On her gravestone, beneath her name and dates, Will had inscribed a single line: "She was traded for a wagon wheel and given a deed to a kingdom." The ranch continued through generations of Fletchers, each one building on the foundation Yates and Eliza had laid. The story of how their marriage began became family legend, told and retold to remind future generations that love could bloom in unexpected places, that treating people with dignity mattered, and that the best partnerships were built on respect, trust, and choice. In the end, what had begun as a desperate bargain on a dusty road became a love story for the ages, proof that sometimes the most unlikely beginnings could lead to the most beautiful endings.